I was that kid in class who probably knew the answer, but I didn't want to raise my hand. Or I'd go to social events and just try and hide in a corner.
Winning it!
So I've been dancing for more than half of my life, but alongside learning the choreography, acting, routines, I also had to deal with record low self-esteem, insecurities, and depression, and obviously confidence. That's what we're talking about today. All that was the hardest choreography I ever learned. So how did I survive? It wasn't cute. It wasn't small little butterflies in my stomach. It was a full-on violent eruption. My palms would get slick and sweaty. My heart would start to beat so hard, it's gonna come out of my ribcage. And then I get all anxious and jittery. Especially performances, my brain would play a highlight reel of every possible thing I could do to screw up. Every tiny mistake felt like it was gonna be the end of the world for me. And that's just how little faith I had in myself. But the stage fright was only half of my problems. The other half was in the classroom, waiting for me every single day. It was the mirror. The mirror was my biggest hater. It didn't just show me my body, it put all my insecurities on display, like an IMAX screen, And in dance, your body is your instrument. That was the constant visual feedback that was a nightmare because I was trapped in the spinning cycle of comparison, of always stacking myself up with the other dancers and always coming up short. And in this prison of fear, it didn't just stay in the studio, it bled into every aspect of my life. I was that kid in class who probably knew the answer, but I didn't want to raise my hand. Or I'd go to social events and just try and hide in a corner because I was convinced that everyone was gonna judge me for everything I did, and I had nothing that would be interesting or useful for people to listen to. And it just made my world smaller and smaller. All of that was just to avoid the feeling of being viewed as vulnerable. And you're probably thinking, dude, why would you still dance? Why are you still there now? I decided to dance because honestly, I thought it would be easy. Watching people on stage dance and oh, I can probably learn that pretty fast. But in reality, you can imagine how that turned out. No. The beginning wasn't pretty. I felt like I had two left feet. And both were stuck in concrete shoes. I'd always be a beat behind. My movements were clunky and really ugly. Now every time I walk in a class, it just felt like a new space for me to get humiliated or, feel humiliated even though no one did anything. And I just have the urge to bolt out of the room and quit. But I think my big transformation itself wasn't something, cool or cinematic, a montage of all those movies, oh, I suck, and then after 10 seconds they're amazing. It really was a slow and brutal process made up of tiny thousand uncomfortable moments. It was a war against my own brain. I think as I slowly was able to show up every day, get in the classroom, and just be there was enough to have won my battle against fear. I think because as I slowly learned to just deal with my insecurities right there and then, just because of the circumstance, that's my class, I have to go. If I don't go, you're skipping class. Really forced me in a good way to get rid of my fears. And I had to fight it off on a few different fronts. So the first front was the mirror. I'd do anything to avoid looking at the mirror and at myself. I'd watch the wall, the other dancers, my own shoes, anything but my reflection, especially my eyes. I'd always look above my eyes whenever I dance. But you can't really learn to dance if you don't look at the mirror to see what's wrong with your postures or with your lines. So I had to look. That wasn't fun, getting comfortable with that. I still am not, but I think I've gotten better with dealing with it. That's all I can say. Because I could see all my flaws. But slowly, I guess, after hundreds of hours in the classroom, I think something shifted in my thick brain. Like my focus started to move away from how my body looked and more to what it can do. I think I started noticing small improvements. Like my posture will get better, straighter, and then my legs will get stronger, more flexible. Like a complex bit of footwork, I suddenly nailed it out of nowhere. The mirror started becoming more of a tool. And then front number 2 is the inevitable screw-ups that I will continue to do. Every studio class, which is dance classes, were all done in Chinese. So I had to understand Chinese, which I did not. For the life of me, I could not understand Chinese. It's like an alien language to me. But you get to the point where it's like you can't really hide from all your problems. And I was screwed because not only did not know what my body was doing, like my brain could not understand what the teacher was saying. So it was like ching chong, ching chong, ching chong. And I was like, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm trying, but I can't. But to make things better, I had this Korean guy next to me who spoke no English and no Chinese at all. And then within like a few months, he could already like speak both. He would be able to get around with both. It was like, for me, I was still struggling with like directions. It's like, I couldn't tell the directions in Chinese. 坐, I'm like 坐. Yo, yo. The other way around. Like 坐, yo. I couldn't, yeah. It's funny now, but back then it was like full on like, I hate myself, I'm stupid, I can't get anything right mentality. That, yeah, wasn't fun. I mean, my friends and teachers did try to help me a lot with that, language and dance and everything, but I think because I was so self-conscious and so caught up in myself, every small thing that I couldn't do was like the end of the world, except it happened every single day. So like end of the world every single day for me. Yeah. Anyways, you know, listing all these, you can imagine everywhere was a minefield for me to mess up, to screw up. It was hard, you know, trying to skip through every single obstacle that you go through is obviously impossible, and I obviously couldn't skip all of them. And so I remember, it's not the worst of my memories, but like I remember first dance competition that I ever did solo, so no one else on stage, a whole full of people in the seats watching me. Yeah, I blanked out. I just stood there like, oh, what do I do? It felt like a year, and I just felt this pure hot sweat running down my face. Like I was like turning red. I was just panicking because I thought people would laugh, criticize me. Oh, this guy's so stupid, he messed up on stage. Because of the pure adrenaline that I had in the moment, I just somehow managed to improvise and then just get out of that situation and continue on with my routine. I finished and I went out. I was surprised because no one said anything really. No one really cared, and I realized from then on, it's not that bad. Why would anyone care about you to the point that every single thing that you do is in their eyes, that they'll be watching you, like you're the main character? I learned from then on, like, the world doesn't revolve around me. And once I understood that, things were easier for me to deal with after that. So number 3, I think, is the best out of everything I've learned. Celebrating tiny wins and not overshooting your expectations and requirements for yourself for results. Yeah, because confidence isn't built on winning the championship. It's really built on the tiny, hard-won victories that you have every single day. You know, I'll never forget learning split jumps for the first time in my life and then actually being good at it. That was like after months of like not leaving an inch off the floor, like wobbly knees and like crazy, I don't know what my body was doing. And then somehow, miraculously, after all those months of grueling training, I was able to suddenly jump, like leave the floor. And it was real proof that I was getting somewhere in my dance career. I started to build self-belief in myself, self-confidence that even though I fail, it's not the end of the world, and you can move on from that. And I don't feel as needy to justify my, problems, because I realize it's not just me going through issues, whether it's the same or different, but learning that everyone has their own struggles and you're not alone in life really humbled me to accept that I'm not that special. At the end of the day, no one's that special. I realized it wasn't really dance that I hated. It was really me. Like I hated myself. Like I hated how I looked, who I was, how I acted, anything possible that I could think of. I hated for myself. And I just buried my insecurities and pretended to be fine. And I didn't even notice that the root cause of everything was because I hated me. Dance really forced me to peel away like a really thick onion. And every time I peel, I cry like really hard. And really look within and look at myself and see who I am and deal with everything. That's how I learned to accept myself, through constant cycle of fear, action, failure, tiny win, repeat. Something really clicked in my thick head. I just don't care as much anymore what people think, and it's so liberating when you don't have to care, because you have so much more time and so much more energy to actually do the things that you want to do and not be like so caught up in the cycle of trying to protect yourself, trying to think of ways to justify why people hate you, why the world hates you, why you suck, why everything sucks. Obviously, everyone has their flaws and we need to fix flaws and we need to be better people. And I think there's always has to be a balance in that. Obviously for me before, it was the opposite and I couldn't deal with my insecurities and my flaws. Accept that I have flaws. Obviously I'm not perfect and I can't do everything, but I'm still gonna try and I'm still gonna give it my all. And I think most importantly is you need to stop comparing yourself to everyone around you. Doesn't matter. Just compare yourself to you. Compare yourself to what you have achieved today, tomorrow, next week, next month, past, present, future, and not what people around you have achieved, because everyone's different. No one's the same. Obviously it's good to compare for reference, but just don't get too caught up in it. Yeah. So every time I walked in the studio, every time I performed on stage with my heart pounding like crazy, looking at my reflection in the mirror, I was casting a vote for my future self. Like I was giving my brain cold hard evidence like, I'm fine, I can do it, nothing's wrong with me. This didn't only just stay on the dance floor, like it really flowed into every other aspect of my life. Confidence, like I started noticing I'd speak more in meetings, I'd actually start conversation with people. I would never imagine that I would be able to do that 10 years prior. I would never have the guts to do that. I think now I'm really able to show who I truly am to people, and I wouldn't care if I act all goofy or troll or stupid, because I know that's just who I am. And if you don't like that, then too bad. Everyone's different. No one in the whole world is gonna like you. There's always gonna be someone you have differences with. I mean, don't get me wrong, these things still scare me. Like my heart still pumps and I still get be anxious. But I think my mind's voice shifted from don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, to more like, oh, hi, I know you, come over here. You tell them to shut up and deal with it. I moved away from hating myself and towards something more like self-acceptance and self-respect. I think in some aspects, it gave me this core belief that I had a toolkit, that I had like a manual book on how to deal with fear. And here's the truth, there's no real shortcut to getting confidence. It doesn't work like that, at least in my case. It's not something you can study, you can think your way through. At least that's not how it worked for me. How I learned to get more confident was really just putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations and those places where you don't want to be, and actually going through with it and just doing it. For me, dance was everything I did not want to do, in the sense of like dealing with my fear. I mean, obviously dance has been part of my life for so long. I do enjoy it. It's just the fact that I had to deal with all those things first before I could actually really get to the enjoying part of dance. Being able to compete solo in dance competitions, to be able to do acting roles that are complete opposites of my personality, like something really shifted. Just stop waiting to be confident. Stop waiting to feel confident. Just have the courage to move, to do, to action on it, especially when you're scared of it. The confidence is the prize you get for putting yourself out there. That feeling in your gut you want to run, that's not a stop sign. It's a go sign. It's go do it. So I'll ask you this, what's your dance floor? What's the one thing that terrifies you? And what's the thing that you put off until you're ready? Drop it in the comments and I guess share our struggles and our stories, and we'll get through this together. One awkward step at a time.